Good morning. Good morning, Riga, Tallinn, Vilnius, and all the other cities. I'm Svilans from Infotrust, and I will be your host today. Let's hope many of you have already joined the event, and we can start. On the practical things, I will share some of the housekeeping items. During the presentations, please feel free to submit your questions in Q&A panel. We will review them at the end of all the presentations, and we'll do our best to answer those. Also, all the materials will be available to you afterwards. But today's event is all about getting practical with ESG topic. And last summer we had a roadshow in Tallinn, Riga, Vilnius, where many of our today's panelists also participated and shared experiences with you. If you didn't participate in the link below is a recording of that roadshow event. After the summer event, I had meetings with many companies in the Baltics, leading companies, discussing how to make ESG process practical, how to make a part of the management process. And the questions were quite similar, and the situation, because how to identify which KPIs are relevant. And once you have identified those KPIs, how you make it a part of the management process. Because if once per year you see a KPI number and see that, oh, the number is not good, let's hope next year it will be better. It will not happen magically. You have to make action, make improvement, make change of that number. And even better if you can do that not once per year, but at least on a monthly basis. So today's event is all about sharing pragmatic and practical approach, how to make this process more available to all the stakeholders in the company and run it. And in today's event, there will be the speakers, Jūlija, Doktorova. She will share experience and approach how to do ESG and non-financial reporting. Then Garda from Latvenergo will share Latvenergo's experience in non-financial reporting. After that, my colleague Giedrius Rumsys will show a practical tool, SAP PaPM, that can manage ESG calculations and make it and actions. And finally, Mariana Viesca from MSG Global will share 2 practical customer case studies who already have implemented that solution. So with that, Jūlija, the stage is yours. And please don't forget to ask the questions in Q&A panel.
Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to be here. Although I can't see you, but you can only see the panelists, but I'm sure that we have met some of you before. And as Maris mentioned, this time we want to focus more on practical things. So we'll keep it to the point, try to keep it to the point. So how to start and what actual things have to be done. We've tried to inspire you on why it is important. Last time during the roadshow mentioned by Maris, but this time let's focus on how to do it. So first, for those who I haven't met before, my name is Jūlija, Doktorova, and I represent Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian environment. We are quite a big in the Baltic state company working in environmental consulting sector. We have experience in many different countries, and we do all different things related to environmental consultancy. And obviously, with the development of ESG and sustainability topic, this has become one of the important parts of our daily job. But I think it's important to mention that we have been involved in promotion of business sustainability even before ESG was a word, a term, a thing. We started working on it together with our partners and established Institute for Corporate Social Responsibility in 2011. And when we already to our partners and interested parties told a lot about how monitoring of your activities in the field of sustainability and reporting it and showing their progress can benefit companies from different perspectives, from, as Maris mentioned, from the internal management perspective, but also through educating their customers and partners, etc., etc. So that's why we know all the difficult things that are related to it quite well, but also know quite a lot of practical solutions. But what's important to know, to mention compared to our to the state of art that we've been in summer, now we actually have the new adopted corporate sustainability reporting directive that has entered into force the 5th of January this year. It still has to be transposed by the
Apologies, Jūlija.
Yes.
Can you make mic a bit closer?
Okay, sure. I will do that.
It's much better now.
Thank you. Thanks. So so this directive, as any other directive, still has to be transposed by the member states. So it is applicable to all the countries within EU member states, but it's already there, and we know what's in there. So the aim of this is to help investors and other interested parties, also public, to have a better information about the sustainability performance of the companies. This is we use the example that is known to most of the companies from many years before. That's like financial reporting. So if you want to participate in a tender, and most probably you will be asked to submit your submit the justifications and submit information that you don't have any tax issues, that all the tax debts, or for example, that your members of the board have no criminal record. This is like a typical procedure. So now, knowing that sustainability and other environmental issues are becoming more and more important, so we know that our potential clients, our customers, want also to know what is the performance of the company in this field. What's good about this directive is that finally there will be a unified reporting standard. As I mentioned in summer, there are from 300 to 500 different standards available at the moment. So any company was free to choose any standard, and it made it quite chaotic and difficult to choose which one, and sometimes you would have different requirements from different institutions. So now there's a chance, and there's a big hope that at least within the EU there will be one standard that all the parties will be focusing on. I will talk about later about the standards. The directive also extends the list to which these requirements are applicable compared to the previous version of the directive. And what's also important is that now ESG report will be part of the management report. So in the past, we had experienced that the sustainability issues could be hidden somewhere in a separate page and not always very transparent. But now it's part of management report, so it will be available and clearly know where to look for this information. Another important feature is this reports will have to be machine readable. So at some point, all the information will be used to assemble in one place, and it will be easy to see the trends and on EU scale. Another important thing, the reports will have to be verified by third party, similar to your financial reporting, but you have to go through auditing process. It's the same thing for ESG reporting, and maybe hopefully not applicable to any of the participants, but there would be penalties for not complying with the directive, but the amount will be defined by the member states. So what actually has to be reported? The new directive follows to very closely different other standards that were out and about, and the most used standards. So you have to first start with describing your business model and describing what is your situation, what you're doing, what are the main parameters. Then it's important that you have to state your sustainability objectives and sustainability policy. So what do you want to achieve? How quickly? What are the numerical values that you're striving to achieve, so you can follow your progress. Then it is important to demonstrate the role of management in all these issues. So how the sustainability is discussed and at the management issues, in the management level, who is involved, whose responsibility it is to deal with it. Then companies will have to explain their due diligence process, so all the things related to compliance, how that's checked, who is checking it, what is the process to make sure that you minimize any risks related to social and environmental issues. And also what's important is that you will have to demonstrate how you evaluate your value chain. So you're not responsible only for the emissions that you produce, but you're also responsible for choosing the suppliers and also your partners that have also that strive to minimize their impact. And also here it's important to stress this risk approach, that you evaluate risks and opportunities that might arise. So it's a forward-looking perspective. So you're not only looking at status quo, what is the situation right now, but you're also looking at how it will change. For example, knowing that by 2050, EU wants to achieve climate neutrality, how it will change the market in which you operate, etc., etc. So you have to demonstrate that you already know what are your risks. So then to again to a more practical thing. So where do you start? For example, you're a company that in 2 years will have to start reporting. So what do you do? So first, and this is what we do, and we can help with you and also to you in this process, and also all the tools that we'll discuss today are also very useful in this process. So the first thing, you have to understand the context in which the company operates. So what is your sector? What are your potential impacts, actual and potential impacts on the environment? What are the risks and opportunities that I have just described as an example? So in doing this, you can analyze your own context. You can look through the guidelines dedicated to your sector to see what are the typical impacts that your company might have or company in your sector has. And then and you do market research to see what your competitors or partners have identified as their risks. So you collect all this information. And then you go through the process that is called materiality analysis. This is where you identify out of all this potential impacts. Materiality analysis, you identify which of these impacts have the greatest impact, so which are significant, and because obviously our resources are limited and we can't focus on all the aspects of environmental, social issues, but we want to focus on the ones where the impact is the greatest. And here, the new directive introduces this term double materiality. So we are looking at where your money goes. So it's financial materiality. So if you have any impact on this through your investments, then it's significant. And also if this aspect might have influence on your financial status, for example, potential penalties or the increase in costs, etc., etc. So this is financial materiality. And the second thing is impact. So is this impact great? Like, is it long term? Is it significant? What is the geographical scope? This is how you assess it. And one of the very important things, and also the directive stresses it is that that you have to consult your stakeholders, and you have to engage them and to understand what they consider as material to your company. So what is significant to them? And this can be done through questionnaires, through interviews, in-depth interviews with the key stakeholders, etc., etc. So then you identify those material elements and those significant impacts. And then from when you have this list, you start collecting the data. So now you know which areas are important, and you start collecting the data to most probably in the first year, you might not have all the data available because it takes time to collect it. But if you know what you have to collect, then slowly and gradually you will be able to build up this database. Also, it's important to collect information on your current policies and measures and actions that you're already doing, because they can fit into some of these elements of sustainability that we're looking at. And then if you don't have an ESG or sustainability policy in place, then it's a good point where you can develop it. So basically analyzing all the historical data, the current situation, and your future risks and opportunities, you set up goals for yourself. What are your sustainability goals? Are you planning to switch to renewable energy within the next 5 years, or are you planning to go climate neutral or reduce your emissions to a certain percent by a certain year? Do you want to achieve to reduce gender pay gap? Do you want to make sure that your for example, fish that you purchase is sustainably sourced, etc., etc. So all these goals and the relevant aspects have to be set. And obviously, to make, as I mentioned before, you have to report on these goals, and also you have to put forward information on how you're going to achieve them. So some sort of action plan where where the responsibilities and what's very important, financial resources are placed next to it. So the stakeholders are sure that these goals are achievable. And then the final element is that when you have all this information, you can proceed to non-financial, to developing the report itself. So you collect all this information in one place and report according to the relevant standard. And as Maris mentioned, this is not a linear process, but as in my graphs, obviously, once you finish this one sequence of process, you will actually return to reviewing your materiality quite often, especially if some of your conditions change. For example, you merge with a different company, or you have a different business area now, etc., etc. So you have to review this, and then obviously you carry on collecting the data and maybe expanding on KPIs that you might suddenly find also relevant to your business. And then over time, you review your ESG policy to see if you are on the right track. So maybe your goals were not very ambitious. So now you see that you can actually achieve more, and then you set new goals and again see how you're progressing towards it. Reporting standards. As I mentioned, there is now a reporting standard, or will be, to be more precise, a reporting standard according to the new directive. It's now in the draft version. You can check it using this link. There are 12 documents, separate documents. Some are general, like how to report in general, and some are related to specific sectors. For example, pollution, climate change, gender, etc., etc. These will be your guidelines on what to report and how. And then just why, again, to repeat, why are you doing this? So they say that you can't manage what you can't measure. Is it true for ESG? Most probably for many elements, this is true. But it's also only valid in the case when you don't develop this reporting because you must, but because you really see the benefits and added value to it, and you use the information to see how you can improve your activity, how you can save some financial resources, how you can minimize your future risks and better use the opportunities. So these are the resources that might be useful for you, and I think the presentation will be available at the event website, so you can download this later after the event. And if you have any questions, you can always contact us directly. Thank you. So now maybe I will have a few minutes for questions, if any.
Yeah, we can check our Q&A panel, and currently there are no questions, but maybe then I will ask Jūlija, when meeting with the customers after event, the most often question was the difficulty to understand shall we include the company include all the KPIs that are listed, or I will switch on the video as well. All the KPIs that are listed, or just take those KPIs which are relevant for the company, and can you help companies in this situation?
Sure. This would be identified in this process of materiality analysis. So this is when you identify what is important and relevant for your company. Obviously, if you have nothing to do with the use of natural resources, then you don't have to report it. If you, for example, if you don't use any water in any other manner than for sanitary use, then most probably this element will not be very significant to your business, but some other factors might. So this is when you identify, and also this new directive, it asks you to justify it. So you can't just say, okay, we're not going to report this KPI because we think that we're not very good in demonstrating progress in this. So in this case, it's more justified by the fact that you have analyzed your situation and you see that this is not how your company is impacting one or another ESG element.
Mm-hmm. But it means actually these KPIs will help the company to become more data-driven companies, as you cannot just see that KPI, is it bad? Okay, but if you don't do anything about it, the KPI will not change by himself.
Yes,
by
exactly.
By itself.
Exactly.
Good. Yeah, if when there will be any other questions, we can cover those in our Q&A session. And I'm happy then to turn the digital stage to Ilze. Are you here?
Yes, hello to everybody, I'm here.
Hello.
Then I think I just share the screen with my presentation, right?
Right, the screen is yours.
Thank you. So, okay, so good morning, everybody, once again, and my pleasure to be here and to share some of Latvenergo's experience in non-financial reporting. I work at the business planning and control department, and my main task is to take care of non-financial reports in our company, in our group. So before I start with the experience in non-financial reporting, just shortly about Latvenergo group. So we do work in the Baltics. We're one of the largest providers of energy supply services. And the three key things that we do, so it's electricity and heat generation, which happens in Latvia mostly. And then it is trade of electricity, natural gas, and related products and services, which we do in all three Baltic countries. And then another thing that we do is electricity distribution, which is again Latvia only. And the entire Latvenergo group comprises the parent company, Latvenergo AS, and then we do have 6 subsidiaries. Latvenergo is a state capital company, so it's fully state-owned, and our shares are held by the Ministry of Economics. Moving forward to the most interesting part today, I guess, sustainability report and reporting. So here I have summarized the very key things about our sustainability report and this reporting process. So objective, content, compliance, and assurance. So the reason why we do it, Latvenergo has issued a yearly sustainability report for about 20 years. It has changed a lot in form and in content, but the key objectives were always to inform our stakeholders about group's operations, activities, and performance. Also to promote transparency of the group's activities, and in this way to build stakeholder trust, stakeholder customer loyalty, and also to proactively create this reputation of a responsible business. So that's been always on the back of our minds when it comes to sustainability reporting. When it comes to content, so currently our sustainability report includes information about those sustainability topics and those indicators or KPIs that are important to the group's operations and our sustainability. We do prepare our report in accordance with GRI guidelines. I think many of you have heard about these before, Global Reporting Initiative Guidelines. And the information included in the report is the one that's required by the so-called non-financial reporting directive and related national regulations. So it's on one hand, it's a voluntary exercise, and the amount of information and data that we give in our sustainability report is way above the minimum requirements. But on the other hand, it's also like a matter of compliance. So as a large state capital company and also a bond issuer, we are required to provide at least some non-financial information. It's been also like, I think around 10 years or so that we do get this limited assurance report on our sustainability report. And it is the assurance or the auditing is carried out by an independent external auditor. This will also be required in the future by the upcoming European sustainability reporting standards. At first, this limited assurance report, then most probably like a proper full report. But our experience and our also some feedback from the stakeholders is that this, even if it's a limited assurance report, it sort of gives like extra credibility to the data and the information provided. So that's a good thing to have. About the reporting process. So here, the reporting process itself, the preparation and then the auditing of the sustainability report, but this entire process is placed under CFO or Chief Financial Officer. And here I'd like to note that it's it's important where you place this reporting process, because right now there are like different places where different organizations and different companies place their reporting process when it comes to non-financial information, but that also in a way gives impression or shows how do you treat your ESG data or sustainability data. So if we have a position, or if this process is placed, let's say at the public relations department or marketing department, then of course stakeholders and investors will most probably see it as first of all as a PR exercise, and maybe less as a qualitative data and proper reporting. So our choice has been for many years that this process is under the CFO, and that it's business planning and control that takes care of compiling the data and assuring the quality. So GRI guidelines, as I mentioned before, so we've been reporting according to these since 2009. And the reason why we chose some guidelines at all, and the reason why we chose GRI guidelines is that those are international guidelines that are widely recognized and widely used, and there are many reports that are prepared according to these guidelines. And even if the requirements still leave some room for interpretation, some room for developing our own methodologies. So it's not as strict as, let's say, financial standards, but still it gives a good backbone and a good reason to compare the data or the indicators between the reports between the companies. Another thing was that GRI guidelines were widely used also like in the energy sector by our competitors. So that was another reason why we went with these guidelines to prepare our report. So the next point, yes, that I mentioned previously, that we significantly exceed the minimum disclosure requirements set by the law. Because in this non-financial directive and also like in the national related laws, currently what is being required are very like general things. Let's say provide a brief description of a business model, but it doesn't specify like what sort of details should be there. And then again, like GRI guidelines, they do require a bit more specificity, and the upcoming European reporting standards, I think, will be even more specific in what needs to be addressed to say that, okay, we have covered a description of our business model. Contents of our sustainability report are largely based on the materiality matrix. And this is what materiality matrix is, the result of materiality assessment that Jūlija mentioned in her presentation. We have decided to, when it comes to quantitative data, we have decided to disclose data for a 5-year period where we can and where it's appropriate in order to show like some development trends and also be able to compare so that the user of a report, reader of the report, can compare the performance and the results, like how they change from year to year. So materiality assessment and materiality matrix, which is the very basis of our sustainability report. We have created, first of all, we have created a list of topics, sustainability topics listed on the right side of the slide. that could be important to energy companies, that could be important to our stakeholders, that are important to us. And then we organize the so-called stakeholder engagement seminar, where our top management get together on site with our key stakeholders like customers, investors, banks, educational institutions, etc. And apart from discussing, like in a form of discussion, what's important and what is not, we also do this questionnaire or voting on a questionnaire. So in order to create this matrix on the left side of the slide, we have done voting and thus placed the different sustainability topics from the most important to less important. And in our report, we disclose information on the two most important groups, the material and medium material aspects, and then the third group, less material. We show them here in the matrix, but we do not disclose information about these topics, or we disclose little information where it's maybe relevant. Before getting to the contents of our sustainability report, just visual representation what GRI standards consist of. So there are three types of standards: universal standards, which describe how the report should be prepared and what principles should be used. And this first group also includes like requirements for the disclosure of general information like organizational details, business model, etc. Then the second group is sector standards, which are currently mostly under development. There's only one standard that's been published for oil and gas sector. But here we, as an energy company, electric utility, we use sectoral standard from the previous GRI guideline version, where there are some extra requirements, what sort of information should be disclosed by energy companies, by electric utilities. So some indicators that are specific to electric utilities only. And then the most interesting part probably are those topic standards, where there are several indicators that can be used for showing how we do perform in terms of, let's say, emissions to air. If emissions to air or climate change is an important topic for us as a company, then we can take the standard on air emissions and climate change and pick those indicators that we find useful as indicators for this topic. So here is basically the very contents for our sustainability report, and in the top three chapters we cover this general information about business activities, business model, corporate governance, and etc. And then chapter number 4, sustainability indicators, is the one that is based on this materiality assessment, on this materiality matrix shown before. And there we disclose all those indicators related to economic topics, to social topics, and to environmental ones. Yes, that was basically a short introduction to our sustainability report and to our reporting process. Are there any questions from your side?
Yeah, let's check the Q&A panel. We have one question, but I believe for the Jūlija's part related to the banking, we'll cover that question in our Q&A session. Ilse, thank you so much. I think one part was how was the process with the stakeholders? That was, I think, quite interesting. When you had so many stakeholders from education and probably shareholders, was it difficult to agree on the important KPIs?
Well, agreeing on the important KPIs, or let's say on important sustainability topics, like the KPIs, the numbers, they indicate quantitative data that is like decided on later at a later stage. But agreeing on what's important, I'd say it was the very part is where you put in a lot of effort. So finding out which topics could be relevant to your sector, to your company, and to your stakeholders and to our company. And then once that is properly done, then the voting on the sustainability topics is in a way a technical exercise. So that the biggest part is to find a preliminary list of those topics that could be important.
Yes,
and we did it in a way that we, first of all, let's say went through the GRI standards, what sort of sustainability topics they do cover. So which one of those could be relevant for us? Then, of course, we took a look at other energy companies, which topics are relevant for them, which topics do they cover. Of course, we also looked internally, what is important for our strategy, for our operations. And that's how the list was like sort of filled up and created for the voting.
All right, thank you so much. There is another question from Ekaterina, and the question is, what is your approach of setting sustainability targets? Do you use science-based targets or any other? And probably this is the next question, how many people are involved in preparing sustainability report?
I'll maybe start with the second part because that's a bit easier to answer. So how many people are involved in preparing of the sustainability report? Many people. So I'm one person who has like a dedicated position to only that sustainability report and all sorts of other non-financial reports that we do have throughout the year. But my task is mostly to compile data and to compile the final numbers from all the other departments that do the actually ESG stuff. So there are people from the environmental department, there are people from HR, there are people from procurement department. And here, unfortunately, I cannot give you any like good estimate on or number of people that are involved or like how many hours they spend per year, because it's just one part of their like overall duties and work day. But we do have this one person who is like taking care of this reporting process, like the very end of it. But the actual implementation and follow-up of the KPIs and implementation of the targets, it's placed with respective departments.
Right. And regarding these targets?
Yes, we do not currently use science-based targets for climate change, but we are considering that. So that's something in the process. Currently, we do not have like a separate sustainability strategy, and those sustainability issues, risks, opportunities are to some point considered under the development of overall group strategy. So that's part of that process. And then we do have some sustainability related targets as part of our group strategy. But the task for this year is actually, we have recently established a sustainability committee that consists of those departments that are that are highly involved in the ESG matters. And so one of the tasks for this committee for this year 2023 is to consider sustainability as a separate issue and to go through all the ESG aspects and to find out whether we need to add something and how we should improve our overall group strategy in order to cover sustainability targets like properly, like fully, because now they are partly covered by the group strategy, but there's certainly some room for improvement. And science-based targets is one of the things that we are considering when it comes to like climate change topic.
All right, thanks. And there is another question. Will Latvenergo ESG report structure change this year from GRI further or until EU standards are approved? Will there be any impact on the structure?
Yes, the impact will be, the upcoming ESRS standards will be mandatory for us, so there is no choice whether to use them or not. So this year, we will still use GRI standards because the ESRS are not yet approved. So the structure will not change significantly. There are some new things that we need to include in the report, but the structure overall will stay the same. But once the ESRS standards are approved, then of course we will move to those standards, and the structure will definitely see some major changes. And we fall in the group which has to prepare their 2024 report according to the new European standards. So we have 1-2 more years with GRI, and then we will switch to the European standards. Perfect.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the questions, and audience also thank you for asking. Good. We are on that right time, and we can move forward to our next presenter, my colleague Giedrius from our Vilnius office. Giedrius, are you ready to take the digital stage?
Yes. Sorry, do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
You hear me well. Okay. So I will try just to share a screen. Let me check. Hopefully you can see my screen.
We do, Giedrius.
So
you can.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. So hello, my name is Giedrius Rumsys. I'm working in Infotrust as senior consultant. Today I'm going to share with you solution which helps companies to report and manage their sustainability. Initially, this tool, SAP Performance and Profitability Management, was created for finance industry, so they could easily allocate costs to cost objects and forecast their financial data. And now this tool can be also applied to the sustainability, because sometimes we want also to allocate CO2 emissions to our products, to maybe clients or suppliers. But first things first, how do we start when we start our sustainability journey? We expect that companies, they have their strategy, scope, their base year, and they have some long-term goals towards the reaching their targets on ESG topic. Where we can help to automatize the way how they are tracking their KPIs. Usually we start with 3, maybe 5 KPIs, because the most important thing is to establish a process firstly, and only then when process is established, you want to increase the amount of KPIs you are tracking. Another thing, when you are going to your targets, towards your targets, you are implementing various measures. You want to measure the impact, and even measure impact before you implementing it. So you can imagine that, for example, if you have a good calculation model established, before implementing anything, you can run what-if simulations and see which of your initiatives can do the best impact for your company in towards reaching your targets. All the meaning of this slide is that sustainability is a process. I represent here the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, which was very popularized by Deming, who started the quality revolution. And we remember this quality revolution in 70s, 80s, or 90s. All companies were just crazy about implementing ISO standards to their management systems. And now I see that many companies will be implementing sustainability standards, sustainability processes, and this so-called sustainability revolution will be very much the same, that it is the continuous improvement, and you want to have a process and not a one-time thing in your company. When you choose your solution, you of course have to take into consideration some challenges. Today there are many standards, and you can imagine that various stakeholders like your banks can ask similar KPI, but in different standards. So you want to have a tool where you keep calculated your KPIs in various standards. You also want that this tool will be adaptable to changes. If something changes, you don't want to redo all the calculations. You want to apply the rule instantly and see how it impacts your KPI. So just save the maintenance time for your calculations. Sustainability, the third thing, challenge is that sustainability, I think, is forever in organizations. This non-financial disclosure reporting will be for many years, because United Nations, Europe Union, they have targets up until 2030, 2050. So it will never go away. You need to establish a process of sustainability. It's no simple task to do. It is just the reality. And fourth thing, behind every CO2 kilogram, CO2 ton, there are euros hidden. So you want to integrate your financial data to sustainability data and give the best benefit out of it. If you are following gender equality, you also want to integrate HR data, as well as some external sources data. So you need to integrate your sustainability to other reporting metrics in organization. And what do companies do to reach or overcome those challenges? Usually they have Excel, the king of all the solutions, because you don't need too much training. It's flexible, but I would say that Excel has some drawbacks. It's not so well designed to establish a process. Also, it's harder for Excel to integrate company data. And usually when you use Excel for a longer period or many years, you see that it's not easy to maintain, especially if something is changing and you need to adapt your calculations. That's why I would recommend to use the database-based solution, which is process-friendly, and SAP PaPM is process-friendly. You can set up a process and track everything, what data came, who ran the calculations, so where we are at the reporting, and etc. And I will show you later this. Also, databases, they usually handle more data. They can handle more data and more complex calculation than Excel. In SAP PaPM, if you have any change in between the calculations, you just go to the model and adjust the rule, and you don't need to redesign all model if there are any changes done, or you have changes like coming from Europe Union standards, right? And in database solution, when you have various connections, you can integrate external data sources as well as other data what is in your organization. So you have like a big data aggregator data hub where you can report sustainability KPIs alongside with financial data. And in SAP PaPM, the standards are maintained by professional. What do I mean by that? That we have the sample content, which is some sort of best practice examples for companies, especially for companies that are beginning their journey and they want to have some sort of ideas how to start, how to calculate some KPIs. We have prepared the sample content where fictive companies, fictive models, fictive KPIs, but you can take this model for free and adapt to your company. For example, wood taxonomy data is also updated from time to time. So this is kind of external data which you can get benefit out of it. Before jumping to the tool, I will provide you what I will want to present regarding SAP PaPM. Firstly, I will be talking about the reporting and what-if simulations. Reporting usually is used for reporting people, for management, as well as transparency is very important in sustainability. So you want to share your how you are fulfilling your sustainability targets with the public. Then we will jump to process orchestration, heads up to sustainability managers. I will show how they can manage all the process from entering the data to the reporting in the tool. And the calculation part, well, this part is where we step in when we start the project. We have modelers when we create those calculations for you. Of course, we train your people and they can shadow us how we work. So once we are out of a project, you have people in your inside organization who can maintain models and even create their own calculation models. Good thing to mention about calculations, SAP PaPM, SAP PaPM, you don't need coding experience. It's just you need to be trained how to use various functions and the various parameters of those functions. So you don't need to go to IT people every time some standard changes, every time you need to change the calculation. A simple analyst, clever analyst can do this after he or she is trained. And finally, we will go just to have a glance how data entry looks like. We can enter data manually, or we can work with your BI team to gather data, automatize the data gathering. So firstly, usually we start with Excel reports, feeding the model, creating the model, and after some time we exchange these Excel reports to some external data sources, or we can directly connect to your ERP systems. Usual implementation process starts with data gathering, of course, and it ends with reporting. But to make things simpler for this presentation, I will start with reporting, and I will go next from left to right until data entry. We don't have too much time, so I will just jump in. I have pre-recording everything because I'm in business trip. I don't want to mess anything. So here is a reporting example. Imagine it could be your company, but here is a fictive company, one of the sample contents I mentioned. This fictive company is a manufacturing company, and it tracks their standards based on United Nations goals, GRI, Green Gas Protocol, and what else that they have manufacturing data live. They have digital twin of their manufacturing, meaning they track data live. And as you can see, they are producing two products, standard and premium axle shafts. they follow manufacturing data alongside with carbon emissions, meaning sustainability data. That's what I was talking about, that it's important to integrate your other data other than sustainability to your sustainability report. That's how you get best benefit. So in this reporting, we have maps, and we can see that we have like 3 manufacturing sites in this fictive company: China, Germany, USA. And they track carbon emissions by country, by product. They track megawatt hours, electricity consumption. And for example, here is a bar chart by product. We can drill down by selecting one of the products. I can expand here, and we see that we see 2 KPIs by month, how axle shaft standard is created. Next, we will jump up to probably one of the most important KPIs in sustainability, that is greenhouse gas emissions, scope 1. You see 3 graphs from left to right. First one is for scope 1, second for scope 2 and scope 3. Here we on the scope 1 have the bar chart, which is again, we can drill down by manufacturing site, but for example, in this graph, it is different from scope 2. And I will quickly show you how you can change by yourself. You just expand the model, expand the graph, and switch to donut chart, apply settings. And here I also will save the layout so that this layout will remain. And now I have the same donut chart just for scope 1 as in scope 2. This is kind of easier to follow the data. I can see that in scope 1, China manufacturing site has biggest amount of CO2 emissions, and whereas in scope 2, the USA manufacturing site has probably bigger GHG scope 2, and Germany is probably a little site, so that's why it's the least amount of emissions. But on the scope 3, again, I see the graph, which is not in line with other scope emissions. So quickly, I will show you how you can change not only the graph itself, the donut, we can change a dimension from category to plant. Again, always we have this drill down possibilities. And to change the graph like I want for scope 2, I just go to chart type, I change pie, and then I need to go to dimensions, and instead of category, I will choose plant. And then change drill down capabilities, because still I want to see everything by category. Once I click on the manufacturing side, apply the changes, go to the layout and save the layout so everyone else could see it. And now if I click on China manufacturing site, for example, I will see it's split by categories, this scope 3 emission split. So this is how you can customize your graphs, whatever you see, and all this is sample content, reporting part. One more cool graph is how you can follow the allocation process, how allocations are going. Here we see this Sankey chart from left to right. We start from plants, then CO2 emissions are allocated to scopes, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and life cycle stage. In the end, it's allocated to those products. So you can visually see how everything looks like from plant to your product. And of course, everything needs to be calculated so that the model could handle these calculations. This is the Sankey chart. for CO2 emissions. And we have another chart for megawatt hours electricity consumption. And from this, this is very similar, the same dimensions, just allocating the only electricity. And we can see that China and USA manufacturing sites are using the most of electricity, and Germany the least. What else? You can save these reports in PDF files. You can embed it to web page and share with the public. The good thing, once you run all the calculations, graphs are updated. So you can update it every month or every quarter. Every time you have new data, you can update and have updated sustainability report in your web page. And I noticed that sustainability people also like text. So when we issue the sustainability report, they also want to have explanation and a lot of text what is done inside the organization. Okay, we don't have too much time. I will quickly jump to what if simulations. Before that, I will also show one more cool thing, that you can actually create your own charts. So I created the additional page, and on the left, you can see the drag and drop interface, the way you can design some things are prepared, and all this, what you see on the left, is prepared by modelers. You need to have to be that it will be prepared, and then somebody in the reporting team or just a sustainability manager can drag and drop those graphs inside the pages and basically create their own report. They can create text as well, and etc. But all this has to be prepared in modeling part, where I will show you that part later. And again, of course, you can share your customized report, whatever you created, in a PDF. And now I will show you how the what if simulation works. So this company has 2 what if simulations. I will quickly maybe pause a little bit the video and explain you. This graph on the left is the base scenario. It is scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, how it is calculated right now. On the right side of the graph, we see the same graph, and currently it has same values as the base case scenario. And later I will just change the parameters and show you how the model recalculates live the result and shows you the data, how it would look like before implementing any changes. And all these are carbon emissions in tons of CO2. So here on the left side, we have 2 parameters, and you are considering energy mix, whether to switch to renewable energy. And you can see what happens. You just apply and simulate. Simulation is going, simulation is done. And we see that scope 2 is reduced significantly, of course. And then you can change another parameter to choose your delivery mode from truck to truck plus train. So introduce train. And of course, it's impacting only scope 3, since these are deliveries. That's how you kind of, if you're choosing, which of the initiative to implement for the next year, renewable energy or to implement trains, you can decide by running simulations. And of course, again, those parameters need to be feed into the model. And here is another what if simulation. It also worked based on our parameter changes. This is all what I want to quickly show you on what if simulations. Next, I jump to process orchestration. Here, sustainability manager can set up a process how everybody can collect the data, then check the data, execute model, and finally do the reporting. In this process, we see 4 activity blocks. There is review input, update input data, execution, and reporting. And under those blocks, there are activities. You can see under review input data, 2 numbers, 0 and 7, meaning there are 0 activities done out of 7. To deploy before doing the process, you need to deploy it. Once you deploy it, all the relevant parties that need to do any of the activities will be notified by the email and will go directly to the same tool and do their job, what they need to do. They will see only, of course, their activities. Now we are seeing what sustainability manager will see. That is all activities that needs to be fulfilled. So for example, we have review input data. We see that user Cater, this is default user for SAP PaPM, needs to review all of the data that is fed into the calculation model. And what he needs to do, he needs to click on the one of activities. There are 7 activities, and just review if the data is correct, if the data is coming. Sometimes it might be there is no data. So now we see that, okay, data is coming, looks fine. So if it looks fine, he or she just goes to the process and it needs to mark this activity whether in approval or completed. If it's in approval, it will go to another person who will approve what reviewer did. But in this activity, we don't have approver, so Cater just simply puts the activity state to completed. The other example is on updating input data, where we have 4I principle. We see there are 2 users, Cater and Super, for all the activities. Cater will review the data and update the data, and Super will approve the data. So now Cater, what he needs to do, update emission factors for transportation. To update this data, he or she can choose to update it manually or through Excel templates. So I quickly show how it's done in manual fashion. He opens the table and updates the emission factors. What he needs to do, just to press edit button, and it works like like in Excel or anywhere else, just enter new number. Of course, when you have a lot of data, I said there are Excel templates. You can download data and then upload all the data. Oops, I think sorry. Yeah. Okay, video is running once again, this update process. So you update this manually, one of the emission factors. After it's updated, Cater will need to go again to his activity, tell that activity now is done from his side. It should go to in approval stage. So here in activity state, we say it's in approval. And then user Super gets notified by email. Okay, I have activity, Cater uploaded data. I need to check. 4I principle, 2 users checking. Once he or she checks, super user says, okay, it's done. After all data is updated, all data is input, somebody has to run calculations. Calculations are predefined in the calculation model. I will show you just after this process orchestration. And you just run model one by one, functions that need to be run and calculate the result. After result is calculated, of course, there is a reporting part. So all those reports, graphs, they are created here in the end of the process. We see the reporting. and reporting is done. So somebody needs then to analyze the reports. Okay, I think this is it for process orchestration. Now, after it, I jump to modeling part. It will be very quick. So this is a modeling part. We call it a professional interface. Later, I will show you drag and drop interface. So what do we have here? We have the same blocks of functions. We always start by integrated data sources. And I just want you to show you that what data is inside this data sources. We also have documentation on each of the calculation step. You can write documentation. So I opened here one of the input tables. And you can imagine, this is a sample content. You can easily delete this data and add your own data, your own company data. So technically, if you exchange all the sample content input data with your company's data, you will have a running model. But of course, it's more a dream than a reality. Oftentimes, it's companies have different structure of data, and it's not so easy to map everything. However, you can grasp some ideas in this model and see what KPIs are calculated and how they are calculated. After integrating data sources, we review data and everything is processed in the calculations. Here, I just, I will just jump a little bit. Yeah, I show you here one of the calculation steps we see here 8 rules, and each rule has its own parameters. Those parameters, as I said, you don't need any coding. You just change parameters, and yeah, you still need to write formulas for your calculations, like in Excel, but there is no coding. And for example, if something in rule 1 needs to be changed, you go here and change the formula, but you don't need to redesign, all other functions. So this is a power of SAP PaPM. And again, all the steps have documentation part. You can describe, modeler can describe what he did so that sustainability manager would understand what was done specifically in this step. This definitely increases the calculation transparency. Yeah, this is processing part, and after processing, there is a reporting part where all those reports are created, and that's how in the report tab, you can choose those graphs and you can set up your reports. Now I jump to modeling flow. This is exactly the same model, the same calculation, just different interface. It's more like user-friendly, more fancy. But what I like about it, that when you select one of the tables, this is the same table, there are arrows and you see how it's related to other functions, where it goes, where data goes. And I'm just showing you that this is exactly the same table I showed you in the previous interface, where you can enter your own data and switch to your company data. And yeah, but of course you need to do it with all your input data to have the model working. So once I click on any of the function, I see arrows. I can expand, and here on the right, I can change the parameters of those functions. And here, basically, I just show you that there are different functions. For example, I want to see in the processing part, emission production activity calculation. It consumes the data from IoT and all other like tables, sourcing tables. So you can understand which step, what data consumes and what goes next. Arrows are showing that. And later this calculation is going to we have this documentation, and you can imagine anyone coming here and reading documentation, following arrows, understanding how calculations are made. It's easier to explain it to your stakeholders, to employees, to talk about, because you have everything in front of your eyes. Here is a yellow ones are join functions, then green where you make allocation to cost objects to products. So basically, you need to do those calculations. You need to be trained. It requires some time, but anyone inside the project will be trained, and later you understand how to create those reports that they will come in the reporting tab. So that I wanted to show you in calculations. A quick recap what I just showed you, because I think there is a lot and I spoke a lot. First, we went through reporting where we can drill down, analyze, make decisions, create our own graph, share PDF, and run what-if simulation. Later, we went to process orchestration. We had roles. I didn't show you teams, but it's the same approach. We just assign roles to the teams. We have responsibilities, who is reviewer, who is approver, timeline, the process tasks, etc. Then we went deeper in the calculations a little bit, where you can join, allocate, calculate. There are some also other functions like machine learning. So it's best benefit that this calculation models, you can have many calculations models and use those not only for sustainability, but also for manufacturing, for finance, for HR, and many more. And yeah, we also grasp some entering the data manually, but there is also possibility to automatize input and connect directly to the database. So thank you for listening. Hopefully there was a little benefit to show you that there are other calculation and sustainability management tools than Excel. Yeah.
Thanks, Giedrius. While we are waiting for any questions, Giedrius has some links in the end of the presentation, and all the materials will be shared. But what I would like to ask you, currently the projects, some of the projects we have implemented are for companies that are using this tool. And by the way, these companies doesn't have SAP as ERP system, so it's a standalone solution, agnostic to any data source. But these companies have implemented PAPM for profitability and performance management. So basically for cost allocation to understand profitability of the products. Do you see potential in these what-if simulations to simulate not just, let's say, impact on the environment by creating some initiatives, but also at the same time to simulate financial impact of that initiative, for example, to cost price of the product or service the company sells?
I see it because reporting part can take the result from different models. So for example, if you have in your company something calculated for finance, right? So you allocate, you calculate profitability, and then you have another model which allocates CO2 emissions to the same products. So what you can do in your reporting, you can connect those two different calculation models, two different streams, and present it in one window. That's how maybe it's easier for someone to make decision, maybe not by product, but for example, today is the topic that you don't maybe want to collaborate with some companies who work in other certain countries. Yeah, you have some political reasons, for example, to make some decisions, and you want to see what you lose and what will be the impact on sustainability, and then to reveal it to your stakeholders. So definitely this PPM can be used for having, the same object just from different angle. You can have the product in context of sustainability and the product like we saw in the sample content in context of manufacturing. But
Perfect.
the key is to always, integrate data. Only then I see the biggest benefit to companies.
Right. Thank you, Giedrius, so much for the insight on about the tool that you are using on the daily basis. And the next speaker is Mariana from MSG Global. Mariana will share some customer case studies, right?
Yes, I will. Hello, good morning. Okay, so let me share my screen. Please let me know when you see it. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we have it.
Yes, perfect. Okay, well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And well, my name is Mariana Viesca. I'm a corporate sustainability senior advisor in MSG. And I want to share with you some of the success stories that we have had with PAPM. This tool that Giedrius was just sharing with us. I want to share with you not only the 2 cases that we have successfully implemented in Spain, but I also want to share with you some of the aspects that we have identified in different companies. Firstly, I want to introduce a little bit of MSG. So MSG is a company that was established in 1980. We have around 10,000 partners around the globe within 29 countries. And over 1.1 billion revenue in 2021. And just to give you some context, so we are the principal partner of SAP in sustainability projects. And we are also a developer of SAP solutions. So I want to get into the topic, but firstly, just to mention some of the benefits that we have found in PAPM sustainability. And I want to present to you some of the main challenges that we have identified in all of the clients. So this is just to give you a little bit of context. No, this is where we usually start in our sustainability projects. And these challenges are almost, if not in all of the cases, repeatedly identified. And this is why I wanted to mention this before I show you how that was solved into specific cases. So these challenges, for example, mainly focus in the data gathering and harmonization. As we have identified, most of the companies have different facilities and different places, and the information needs to be gathered and centralized in only one place. And now doing that sounds easy, but when you're managing the information in sustainability in, for example, Excel tools or different spreadsheets, well, it might get a little bit complicated around that, along the way to gather all that information. And also sometimes, and what we have found is that not only is the information a little bit different, sometimes the format changes, sometimes the data sources are very different, so the information changes, and that makes it very difficult for the sustainability managers to handle all that information and exactly calculate the information to report it in an efficient and easy way. Now, another challenge that we have found in most of our clients is, for example, the orchestration, traceability, and auditability. As we know, right now, it's not mandatory in all the initiatives to audit your information, but it will be in the future. And having that traceability of where that information came from, who was the manager or the owner of that information, and where that specific data was taken from, it's very important for sustainability team members. And it's very difficult right now to trace back where that one specific number came from. So this is a challenge. And also in terms of orchestration, it's very difficult to handle different, for example, sites. If your company has presence in different countries, sometimes handling the information of when are we getting this information, how are we going to receive it, etc., might be a difficult challenge for most of you. Now, another issue that we have encountered is most of the companies right now want to set ambitious targets, in sustainability, and knowing how to get to those targets might be difficult, not only because right now you have the picture, but you don't know what type of initiatives can take you closer to those targets, and also taking into account the growth of the business might be difficult. It could imply some calculations, and doing that, it's a lot of effort for most of the companies. And another challenge is what my colleagues have been mentioned, that we will have so many initiatives and so many regulations coming our way in terms of sustainability, and giving response to those regulations and initiatives might be a challenge for you, not only because it is a lot of information that needs to be handled, but also because there is different ways of handling that information. And sometimes even the regulations or the initiatives ask for the exact same information in different formats, different units. So that is another challenge that usually companies face. Now, what are the benefits of PAPM, this tool that Giedrius was just showing us? Well, we help you solve these issues and challenges that you are facing. In the case of data gathering and harmonization, what we do is we centralize all the information in one specific place. So sorry for that. So we centralize all the information in one solution. Everything is handled there. So you just have to go there and find the information that you need. And also the homologation. What we have found is, for example, when you have different departments, sometimes the type of information is handled in a different way. Even the names of companies is handled in a different way. So having one tool where you can centralize and do the harmonization of that information is a benefit for most of the companies. And this is managed, as Giedrius was mentioning, through mapping. What we do is in the tool, we establish some mapping in which we say what specific information is used in each department and how that can be translated for the rest of the departments. In terms of orchestration, traceability, and auditability, the tool helps you to achieve complete traceability. You know specifically where that information comes from, how that information was transformed throughout the project, and it helps you to identify specifically where maybe some of the, errors or challenges were identified. Now, in terms of orchestration, it also helps to facilitate this, not only because you can identify different data owners, but you can also identify some people that are going to be in charge of the review and that can do these quality controls throughout the process. And also you can identify the data owners and notify for internal and external auditing. Now, in terms of simulations and projections, just as Giedrius mentioned, we have some specific ways of creating these simulations based on your needs. So each parameter can be adapted to your needs so that you can identify which are the, for example, initiatives that will take you closer to your targets. And you can also introduce that calculation in the tool so that you can always have a control of the performance that you have as of now and where that performance is in terms of your targets in the future. Now, in terms of response to different types of initiatives and regulations, also the tool transforms the information so that you don't have to do it individually and put a lot of effort in transforming that information to give response to different initiatives. It is all handled within the tool. And finally, before we go to these 2 success stories, I just want to explain, so what is the approach we usually have in the projects? First, what we do is try to identify where do you have the information. So where specifically do you have the environmental information, the social information, the governance information? We review what are the type of data sources that you are using. So for example, maybe you have all your information in Excel files, but maybe you have some information in some SAP applications, for example, in Ariba, in Concur, in SuccessFactors. So we can identify what type of information you have there so that we can automate the extraction of that information to be used for the sustainability calculation. Now, after we identify where you have their information and what are the data sources that you have, we integrate that information into the tool so that it's processed in a way that we can calculate your environmental performance, your social and governance performance, and you can give response to all these different initiatives. You can also use the tool to evaluate and monitor how your performance is being handled. As my colleagues were mentioning, you can take a picture at any time of the year so that you can manage sustainability, not only report it, but also manage it in a constant way. And yes, as mentioned, you can establish sustainability targets, do the simulation and forecasting, do the reporting and the integration of business processes within the tool. Now, let's jump into the success stories. What I want to give you is first just an introduction to the company so that you understand a little bit the context of each of the companies that I want to present. And then, yes, I will show you some of the pain points that they had and how PAPM helped them solve it. So the first success story is the ship manufacturer is Navantia. It is a Spanish state-owned shipbuilding company. They design and construct high technology military and civilian vessels. The sector is a discrete manufacturing. Some of the activities they have is the shipbuilding, turbine manufacturing, green energy, and the company is quite big. They have over 3,000 employees. They have 4 companies in Spain, but then they have different international locations, and they have within Spain, for example, 6 shipyards. And why I mention this, because each of those locations give different type of information and everything is centralized within the tool. Now they have presence in over 20 countries, and the main objectives they had and sustainability needs they had was to achieve a centralized solution in which they could gather all the information, manage it, and give response to the different initiatives. As you can see, they have some specific objectives. One of the main ones is fighting climate change, and they do this through the management of the GHG emissions. And they want to give response to different standards. Some examples are the ISO 14001, ISO 14064, as we know, the carbon footprint. And then they also want to give response to the NFRD, the EFRA, etc. Now, these reporting needs, of course, are aligned with the GRI and the ESRS. And the scopes within the carbon footprint that as of now, they have introduced in the tool is a scope 1 and 2, but they have plans to introduce a scope 3 in the near future. Now, let's focus on the pain points. So their main pain point, was that they have these multiple locations and they had to gather the information from these multiple locations, not only for environment, which is what they previously did, but also for social and governance. So they wanted to gather all that information in one tool. Now, they had different sustainability parameters and requirements per department. And what I mean by that is, for example, the levels of granularity that they have changed depending on the department. For social, they wanted to see the information based on their companies. For environment, they wanted to see the information even to the lowest level by shipyard. So they wanted to understand the whole picture in terms of environment KPIs. And this was one of their pain points because previously they couldn't see that specific picture in terms of the lowest level of granularity. And also they wanted to understand what was happening in the multiple production plants. They had multiple source systems. What we did with them was go one KPI per KPI and understand specifically where they were getting the information from. And they didn't have much automation. They had, for example, a lot of SAP tools, but they weren't connected with those tools. What they did is they requested the information they needed for the sustainability reports. And the person, for example, in HR just went into the SAP tool, downloaded the table and sent it to the sustainability department. Of course, that meant a lot of time and effort in handling all that information. They had different applicable sustainability standards that they wanted to give response to, and they had a lot of complexity in data gathering. Now, some of the benefits of PAPM not only did we solve these issues and pain points that we just mentioned, but we did bring some additional benefits to their sustainability management. When they started the project, they wanted to see how could they increase the automation, because when we started, we identified that most of the information was coming from Excel. But as mentioned, what we did was, okay, yes, this information is coming from an Excel, but where is that information coming from? What is the main source? And then when we identified that they had it in their system, what we did is jump the step of the Excel gathering, and we jumped directly into the tool. So we connected the information and absorbed it directly from the SAP solution. Another benefit of PAPM is that we centralize all the information in just one solution, so they didn't have to have plenty of files individual to handle this information. And we also supported them to give response to the different ESG reporting standards that they are aligned with, and they usually give response. Now, another important benefit of PAPM within this company was that we offered an end-to-end traceability. So before, they didn't understand, or they didn't quite know where that information was coming from. And now with PAPM, they can just trace back some of the steps and identify specifically where that information is coming from. And with that, they can give response to the different needs that are coming from the auditors. In the case of Spain, the NFRD, for example, it is audited and needs to be audited and verified in order for it to be presented. So this was the case of the Spanish shipbuilder company. Now, the second success story that I want to share with you, it's a little bit different, but it has some of the similar pain points. This was sanitary ware manufacturing. What they do is then they design, produce, and market products for bathroom spaces, and they have over 100 years of history. The activities is a production and sales of solution covering all the needs of bathroom spaces. They have over 20,000 employees around the world. They have a big number of companies, over 50 companies. In terms of locations, they have over 100 sites, over 70 plants, and as mentioned, over 50 companies. And then they have presence in around 170 countries. So you can understand that the complexity they had in handling the information coming from sustainability was pretty high. They have really, really ambitious objectives in terms of decarbonization, for example, and also sustainability, circularity, everything you can think of, they are doing it. So it's a very ambitious company that is doing a lot of things in terms of sustainability. They are complying with different standards such as ISO 14001, SBTI, Global Compact, the NFRD, the GHG protocol, etc. And their main reporting needs for this project, the starting project, was to give response to the NFRD in Spain in a more automated way and through a one only tool. And then also to start implementing the scope 3 calculations. And yeah, the scopes that were included in the project was scope 1, scope 2, and now in the future, well, near future, scope 3. Now, in terms of their main pain points, so Again, the levels of granularity was very important for them because they have, yes, 50 companies, but they also wanted to have a specific picture for the different sites that they have around the world. And as mentioned, they have a lot. So what they wanted is to have a way in which they could monitor the performance of, for example, their environmental KPIs. And they wanted to have a specific picture. They wanted to have our overall picture in terms of the global performance of the company, but then they also wanted to go detail by detail. So they jump into, in terms of company, how the environmental KPIs are performing, and then into a little bit more detail now in terms of sites, how each site is performing in each environmental KPI. And this is a lot of information that we needed to handle within the tool. And this was very complex for them. And previously they didn't have these individual pictures, and now they do within the tool. Now they also had different data sources, and they had a lot of complexity in handling the information and also integrating the information. Not all the plants had SAP, so we had some plants that had some information in their systems, but others didn't. So we had to do a mix of different data sources for the beginning of this project. And also they had lower harmonization and lower identification. In the case, what we found is that, for example, in the social department, they were talking about some company codes, and then in the environmental department, they were talking about other company codes. And we had to establish an individual or a specific language so that each of them knew what they were talking about, but everything was handled within what tool and one specific company code. So we had to do a lot of mapping within there. And then also they were missing some errors that were within the data, but when we started to integrate the information in PAPM, we were able to identify those errors. So this was a very important benefit. And also the scope 3 was very challenging for them. And now we're starting to identify how we can automate that process too. As mentioned, one of the benefits was the automation of the data collection, the improvement of the quality of the data. We identified that they were missing some numbers, and we were able to identify those numbers and add them. And also they requested for us to have some monitoring reports for each of the departments, because each of them wanted to measure different ways their KPIs. So we created individual, for example, reports for each of the departments. The calculations in PAPM without manual interaction, that was one of the highlights too. The end-to-end data processing automation, and also the harmonization, the traceability and auditability of the report. The qualitative report is not only better managed in terms of sustainability, but also they now do it in less time. And yes, we have helped them identify what are the main data sources for scope 3. And we are also helping them identify how we can automate those data sources. So as mentioned, these were very complex and challenging projects, but we can see the advantages of them using PAPM to manage sustainability. And yeah, this is very enriching for us. So yeah, I don't know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Mariana. While we are waiting for the questions from our audience, I have one question. I noticed that scope 3 probably is the most challenging task for the companies. Can you share how the tool that you used and Giedrius demonstrated, how it is capable of handling the scope 3 calculations? Yeah. Is it helping?
Yes, a lot. The important thing is that throughout the tool, what we are able to do is to identify the main data sources, and we are able to help our clients to identify where they can have that information. So as mentioned, the starting point is we help them identify those data sources and see if, for example, they already have some within their system, so that it's even easier to automate the process of gathering that information. but also managing that information is very, very challenging for most of our clients. And what we have seen is that through PAPM, they reduce a lot the effort that they have in handling all this information, because we establish through the modeling all the calculations, and they are very fast and very easy to use. And also they can start small and then continuously increase. The tool is very flexible and it can give response to the different needs that might come in the future. So that's very advantageous also from the tool.
Thanks. And I see Jūlija, you have also some.
Hi, Jūlija.
Hi, nice to see you, Mariana. I have a question about scope 3 and emission factors. Maybe it will be interesting for those who are more aware of the process, how it is integrated, like, because it's also quite a difficult element. Maybe you can tell a bit more about this.
Yeah, and not only the emission factors, no, sometimes we have even the conversion factors, and it needs to take into account like different levels of complexity. But what we have found is, let me stop. I stopped sharing, right, the screen. Yeah, okay, sorry. What we have found is that within the tool, it's very easy to not only update and trace down what type of emission factor you are using, but for example, if you already have some specific emission factors that consultants like you gave the clients, we can easily integrate them in the tool, and they can easily identify in, for example, if they need to update them every year, etc. They can easily identify where to do it, and they don't have to go into the modeling part to do so. We can generate just a template in which they can go in and manage the information. So yes, we have some specific emission factors that are usually the standard ones, and the ones that maybe are not very specifically used for each of the companies, but you can use yours without any problem, and they can also be integrated here. And as mentioned, it's very easy to trace down how to do the conversions too, because we have found, for example, in some of these clients, they had so many different types of little units and calculations that they used before even converting into CO2 emissions. And we did help them also to map. If you, I don't know, if you use liters, then we can modify them automatically to kilograms, and then you can easily, change it to CO2 emissions.
Yes, thank you. That's very useful.
Yeah, thank you.
Regarding other questions, we have before we had a question about what is the major impact of compliance with ESG in the banking sector and the main risks.
Okay, shall I take it?
I think that was for you. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, in the EU, this whole process of reporting actually starts with banks, because banks are those that are managing the financial resources, and those who themselves might have very limited impact on the environment. For example, it's an office-based company. What great impact might it have? But actually, with the money that the companies, the banks, and other financial institutions invest, they are playing the role of decision makers of where does the money go to. And that's why this whole ESG topic is super important and relevant for the banking. In the EU, it's already starting from last year, or actually no, this year, the banks are reporting their own emissions. It's a must, but starting from this year. From 2021, in 2021, banks had to report their own emissions, scope 1 and 2, and from 2023, they have to report emissions of scope 3. So basically, what impact does their investment have? And this is also translated into very specific requirements for all the clients of the banks and financial institutions, because banks not always have all the information, but they have to build up the systems. And you can imagine, like with just an example that Mariana gave, that banks might have thousands of different clients, and all this information has to be gathered in a unified manner and transformed into some meaningful figures that have to be reported. So basically, there's a direct and very specific requirements for banks.
Yes, thanks, Jūlija. There is another question. So, who determines the scopes, and is that based in the scientific information? That probably is a bit more general question.
Yeah, I mean, for example, in our case, if the company does not or has not yet calculated their GHG emissions or any of the scopes, we do have some sample content that can be used for guidance, and they can specifically identify what type of information they will need in order for them to calculate the different scopes. So the scopes are based in our sample content, in the GHG protocol, which is one of the main, if not the main protocols in terms of GHG accounting. And what they do is they can use that as a basis in order for them to start calculating their carbon footprint and the different scopes. Now, if they do have already calculated some of the GHG emissions, we can also help them improve that through some consultancy, but also in terms of the implementation of the project, it can also be improved the way they calculate their emissions.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So it seems all the questions have been answered. If you might have any additional questions to us, to our today's speakers, please feel free reach out to us. All the materials will be available after the event and shared with you, dear participants. To sum up, I hope we managed to get more practical on ESG topic, how to move from theory into action, how to start the process, how to measure it and make a part of the continuous improvement cycle, as Giedrius shown. And in case if you are interested,
Maris, sorry, this
yes.
is Giedrius.
Yeah,
I see
Giedrius.
that one attendee is raising a hand.
All right. So the questions can be yeah. Let us see. Lina, maybe you can manage to connect to the speaking mode, or the question can be submitted in Q&A panel.
Meanwhile, maybe I can ask also Mariana. I wanted to, to understand how, when you implement scope 1, scope 2, how long does it take? And then companies, once they have scope 1, scope 2 tracking some of the KPIs, how long takes to switch, then also connect the scope 3?
It really depends on each case, because it depends on the complexity behind the client. They might have a lot of sites, a lot of information. They might have low quality information. So we would need to work on that too in order for it to be enhanced before even going to the tool, or enhanced within the tool. So it really depends in each case. And in terms of the scope 3, it also depends on the number of categories they want to respond, and also the complexity behind each one. But what we do is, first, yes, we understand what type of information they have, and we analyze each of, for example, if they already have some Excel files in which they calculate their carbon footprint, we go into the detail, we understand what type of calculation they're doing, the complexity behind, and for each case, we give them some estimation. But if it's already handled, yeah, it could be pretty easy to introduce it to a tool. But yeah, it really depends on each case.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. I think, yeah, we are right on the time, 2 minutes, 1 minute already just to go. And in that last minute, I will use this time to thank you for your interest in this topic. If you are interested to learn more, meet us, our panelists of today. Please feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to meet with you, have a discussion, and even help to try out the solution that Giedrius showed. Maybe it can show, we can show and help to tackle some of the issues, for example, in scope 3 calculations or in what if simulations or any other topic. With that, I thank you also, dear speakers, for your time and your topics, which are very practical today. Many thanks, and hope to see you next time in one of our follow-up events that we are sure to arrange this year to tell even more success stories of ESG process management. With that, I say thank you, and thank you for your time. See you next time.